All right, welcome to Idea Cochise for Cochise Rome, weighing in the weight classes, episode 4B. This is the review episode of UFC 134 Rio. This is the epitome of why I do these reviews in the way I do them. I wait a couple of days after the event takes place because I was caught up in the excitement just like everyone else. There are people saying that Pride is back, and yeah, the three main fights on this card were all won by old Pride fighters. I'm not going to say Pride's back. They're UFC fighters now. Well, maybe not Nogueira, but Shogun and Anderson Silva are definitely UFC fighters at this point. Let's backtrack. Let's get to the preliminary card because there's a couple of fights I need to talk about. Lewis Cain. I don't know what's going on. There's something that the camera is not showing us, the viewer. He must be telegraphing his punches because he has a tremendous problem defending the hooks. It led to his demise with Little Nogueira, as led to his demise last Saturday. I like Lewis Cain. I think his striking is really good, but if he can't defend those hooks, he's going to have a hard time making it anywhere in any organization. He may be the new Keith Jardine. Jardine has a big problem with hooks as well. Yeah, and I feel bad for him because he was the only Brazilian to lose last Saturday, and I hope he's not cut because of this performance. I want him to get at least one more chance. Another preliminary card fight in which I considered the fight of the night, but for the wrong reasons, was Rousimar Palhares versus Dan Miller. I predicted Rousimar Palhares was going to leg lock Dan Miller in 2 rounds, and he ended up doing something a little bit different. It ended up being a complete ass whooping for a good 10 minutes, and then the last 5 minutes was both fighters keeping their distance because of the fatigue. Like I said, it was fight of the night maybe because it's interesting because Rousimar once again stopped what he was doing, and it almost cost him big time in that first round. Yes, he was beating the shut out of Dan Miller, but Dan Miller didn't stop, and the referee didn't end the fight. Now, this is the second time Rousimar has done this. One time with Nate Marquardt, and now at this point. He needs to learn what's going on because this can be a very big problem for him. I mean, what if this was a championship fight? Well, if this was a #1 contenders fight, it really would have cost Rousimar big time had he made those mistakes. He needs to learn a little more discipline. I love Rousimar Palhares. I've had the chance to meet this guy. He's a very humble dude, but I have to be honest. That being said, the fight of the night actually went off to Edson Barboza and Ross Pearson. In a split decision, Edson Barboza won that fight. And I personally believe that Ross Pearson won the fight. Once again, I think it was another situation where a fight is called based on the last couple of minutes. Ross Pearson pretty much nullified Barboza's striking for about the first cool 8 minutes. The second half of the second round was a little more even. There wasn't a ton of great action in the first couple of minutes of the third round, but it picked up at the end. The only thing is that they kind of fucked up with Pearson was that all the highlights of Barboza's striking was pretty much all the offense Barboza had in round 1 and 2. I mean, they highlighted his combinations, which were really slick. They was just too far. They was just too far away from each other for me to say that I truly felt Pearson lost. But Pearson won in a way that, one, he got the fight night bonus, which was $100,000. That's great for him. And secondly, I think he got the notoriety. This fight to me was more important than him winning the Ultimate Fighter Season 10. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing both of these guys fight, and they put some notoriety to themselves. The only problem I had was I felt the Rousimar Palhares fight was #1, but for the wrong reasons. And the fact that not only did the Barboza fight come after the Nogueira fight, but the Eric Silva fight came after the Nogueira fight. Now, I like Edson Barboza. I like Ross Pearson. I never heard of Eric Silva or Luis Ramos before. But you do not put those guys after Nogueira in Brazil. You don't put those guys after Nogueira in fucking Antarctica. I don't know what the hell they were thinking. I think this really shows the lack of faith that they had in Nogueira. Like I said before in my preview video, oh my god, I'm sweating, it's really fucking hot out here. But I wanted to change the settings. The thing is that, like I said before with the Nogueira, is that he keeps his hands wide. And that cost him big time in the Cain Velasquez fight. Anytime, I don't care what kind of chin you have, you take a combination after combination, just a 1-2 on the chin repeatedly from a heavyweight with 4-ounce gloves, you're going to get knocked out. I don't give a fuck who you are. This time Nogueira really kept his hands tight. I wasn't so thrilled with him being 243 pounds. I feel the best Nogueira is somewhere between 228 to 235. He looked a little big. That being said, one thing about Brendan Schaub, who I kept calling Shakab back in the preview video, I'm very sorry about that to Brendan. He's not the Gabriel Gonzaga. He can take a little bit of damage, but he doesn't cover up. He doesn't go into a fetal position to beat as Gabriel Gonzaga does. But I just think he's another hard hitter who can't take a hard hit, and that's going to really hurt Brendan Schaub later on. The big question is now, where does Nogueira go from here? Brendan Schaub can have a comeback fight. He can have 2 of them later on. 5 months time, he'll be back fighting again. He has a future. Nogueira's future is not as lengthy, of course, with all the fights that he's had. There's talk about UFC going to Japan in February, and I love to see that fight. I love to see Nogueira fight in Japan, primarily to Frank Mir. However, depending on what happens with the Strikeforce Grand Prix, I would love to see Nogueira, Josh Barnett 3. If you haven't seen those fights, I think you can look them up on YouTube. It's some of the best heavyweight fighting in mixed martial arts ever. Everything is displayed in those. I don't know. I think it's about 5 to 6 rounds. There's different round intervals because one was for the openweight Grand Prix, another one was just a regular pride fight. Clinch game, striking defense, submission defense. Everything is displayed with those 2 fights, and I'd love to see a 3rd one. Let's get on to the Shogun versus Forrest Griffin. One thing I gotta say, leading up to the event, Forrest Griffin showed absolutely no interest in just being in Brazil. He was complaining about the time change, about the weather, about the food that he couldn't eat. And I just have to think, what do you think all those Brazilians or Japanese or Koreans or Europeans do when they fight in Vegas? They have to deal with all these adjustments. So I kind of didn't like the fact that Forrest Griffin was bitching about that, only doing it one time in his career. I don't know, the interviews, they didn't seem to be really focused on Shogun. It just seemed to be focused on Forrest Griffin's life. And I just think that was, I don't know, it gave the perception. I know that Forrest was training hard. I hope he was. It just gave the perception that he wasn't into it. Shogun came in, and like I said before, he's a Clark Kent Superman fighter, and unfortunately Superman came out this time, beat the crap out of Shogun. Beat the crap out of Forrest. Where does Forrest land here? I think since he already fought Rich Franklin, I don't want to see an Ortiz 3 unless that's like an undercard on like a free event, something like UFC Live or The Ultimate Fighter or some shit like that. I'm not paying to fucking watch that. Little Nogueira makes a lot of sense. Little Nogueira makes a whole lot of sense. Maybe Phil Davis, but I heard Phil Davis might be fighting Lyoto Machida. Where does Shogun go from here? I think he should take on the loser of the John Jones Rampage fight, or perhaps Machida Shogun 3. It all depends on injuries and stuff like that. Now we go on to the main event. Yushin Thunder Okami versus Anderson the Spider Silva. Pinpoint what I said in the preview. The speed factor was pretty much the end of Okami. The first round, everyone said Okami got squashed, he got squashed. You have to look at the whole fight. The first round was actually pretty even. The clinch game was really working for Okami. But the problem is that Team Quest dirty boxing clinch style against the cage doesn't work against the Brazilians for some reason. Randy Couture could not get that game going on with with Machida or Nogueira. The last time I think it worked against a Brazilian was Couture versus Vitor Belfort way back, fucking I don't know when. That being said, Anderson Silva displayed all of his strengths in the second round. Once again, putting the hands low, doing the anchor punches and stuff like that. I think what a lot of fighters end up caught up doing, they look at his exposed face and then they start wondering, well, should I throw the punch or should I go for a takedown? Don't go for a takedown. His hands are already in place to defend the takedown. They're already there. He's more accurate, and outside of Vitor Belfort, he has the fastest hands in the middleweight division. So he's just going to pop you, and he popped you on the side of the jaw. Not the chin, but the side of the jaw, which disturbs your equilibrium, and that's why people fall down so quickly. The only defense I can think to this is perhaps throwing jabs or straights to the body and circling away from his power leg. So if he's standing in a orthodox style, that means, right foot back, you want to be rotating this way. If he's going southpaw, you want to rotate this way, and just concentrate on the jabs and the straights to the body, only using striking. You have to stay in punching distance and not in kicking distance. You stay in kicking distance, you're fucked. Just like Vitor Belfort was. The only thing is that this does not mean that he does not have another million ways to embarrass you, but putting your hands low, just viscerally, is not only a blow to the fighter, but it's a blow to the fighter's career. And hopefully Okami can come back and have a successful UFC run. Yeah, other than that, now I think it's getting more and more difficult to hype an Anderson Silva fight. He's already subbed Dan Henderson. He subbed Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen does seem like the logical choice if he gets past Brian Stann. If he doesn't, if Chael Sonnen loses to Brian Stann, the middleweight division is pretty much fucked. There's really no one there for him. Other than that, that's pretty much all I have to say. I'm looking forward to UFC 135. Not so much for Jones Rampage, but for Gomi Nate Diaz. And I'm going to have a preview of that coming up really soon. A couple of days before it happens. Other than that, guys, take care.